One of Dr. Seuss's most popular and beloved books, especially around graduation time, is Oh, the Places You'll Go. Now, this is a longer poem, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but part of it goes like this. You have brains in your head and feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose. You're on your own. You know what you know. And you are the one who will decide where to go. Now, like so many of Dr. Seuss's works, Oh, the Places You Go is more than just a cute children's poem. It's a celebration of potential and of possibility. It speaks to young hearts and tells them what we all need to hear from time to time, that you've got what it takes, that you've got feet in your shoes, meaning you can go places. You've got brains in your head, meaning that you're smart and can think things through, that you've got the ability to make choices and the freedom to chase after your future and your dreams. Now, Dr. Seuss reminds us that life is just a great big journey, and each of us gets to decide what we're going to do with it. Sure, if we're being really honest, we're going to need some guidance along the way. But part of growing up is realizing that we can figure things out, that we can move forward, we can make decisions and take responsibility for the direction in our lives. It's meant to be an empowering and uplifting message, one that tells us that we're not helpless, that we're not meant to just sit around and be told what to do, that we're not mindless machines programmed by others. We are capable of learning and thinking and choosing and growing, that we can stand on our own 2 feet. We can make decisions. We can reason and reflect and move forward with purpose. So, whether you're moving into a new season of life or facing some kind of tough decision, or maybe you're just feeling stuck, remember this. You were made to move forward. You were built to grow. And oh, the places you can go. This is the message Dr. Seuss has for us. Now, I can agree with all of that to an extent. Yet its message can make me just a little bit uneasy if I'm being real honest. Why? Because it flies dangerously close to being prideful. Its terminology seems eerily like what we read in James chapter 4, starting verse 13. You should know better than to say, today or tomorrow we'll go into the city, we will do business there for a year and make a lot of money. But what do you know about tomorrow? How can you be sure about your life? It is nothing more than a fleeting vapor that appears only for a brief moment and then disappears. What you should say is, if the Lord lets us live, we will do these things. Yet you are foolish enough to brag, and it's evil to be so proud. So these folks had brains in their heads, right? They were business owners who made money. They had feet in their shoes, meaning they could travel to distant cities. They had a direction that they had chosen they were going to go in. They made decisions. They planned ahead. And they made those decisions, as Dr. Seuss tells us, because they knew what they knew, so they were the one to decide what they'll do. Now, this is a fairly solid business plan. They had everything figured out, or at least almost everything. They knew when they would set out to conduct their business. They knew where they were going to do it. They knew how long it would take to become successful and turn a profit. They knew what they were going to do while they were there and what their objective was. They were going to make some money. It's not a detailed business plan, but they had a plan. However, as you read through this, and I think this is where the problem comes in, they had left something important out. God. God was nowhere in their plans. And this was the problem. So James says that their plans are not only boastful, but they're also evil. He implied that they were proud and arrogant men. But something, as I'm reading through this story, struck me as being kind of odd. James seems to condemn these men as being proud and boastful, but it didn't seem to me that what they were doing was all that proud or boastful at all. When I think of a proud or boastful person, I get this visual image in my mind, right? I visualize someone who goes around saying things like, hey, look how awesome I am. In fact, I'm so awesome, I even surprise myself sometimes. I mean, do you know how lucky you are to be around me? I'm so awesome that I don't think you folks could survive 1 minute without me. Now, in my mind, that is a proud person, right? That's a boastful person. They might not say those things out loud, or maybe they are saying those things out loud, but that's how they come across. You can tell they're proud because they assume that you need them. They see themselves as being indispensable. I came across a kind of informational poem about this mindset. Sometime when you feel important, sometime when your ego is in bloom, sometime when you take it for granted that you're the best person in the room, sometime when you feel that your exit would leave an unfillable hold, just follow this simple instruction and see how it humbles your soul. Take a bucket and fill it with water. Put your hand in up to your wrist. Pull it out, and the hole that is remaining is a measure of how much you'll be missed. You see, proud people think of themselves as being indispensable. They believe that they don't need anyone else, that they are self-sufficient. In their every word and action, you can tell that they don't need you, that they don't need me, and most importantly, they don't really need God. These are the people we think James is talking about when he says in James 4:6, God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. So they are so obviously proud and self-centered that this must apply to them. But here's the thing about pride. If we're really being honest, pride, it kind of sneaks up on you. If you're a proud person, you probably don't even realize it. Jeremiah tells us that the human heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Meaning, if I am being a proud person, I probably am not going to realize it. I wouldn't think of myself as being proud. I'm not proud. That person over there is proud, but I'm not proud. And these folks in James 4 probably didn't think of themselves as being prideful either. They were just being self-sufficient. They didn't need anybody else to tell them how to run their business. They could do it themselves. But they probably didn't think of themselves as being proud. But James says they were. And frankly, I had trouble figuring out why James called them this. Then it occurred to me what he's saying. You see, in their plans, these businessmen didn't even think about God once. Now, they were probably religious men, but God was something they did on the weekend. Over here on this shelf is church, and over here is business. When church was done, they had put God up on the shelf, and they only intended to take him down when they really needed him. But for the most part, they didn't need God. So here's the first clue that you might be suffering from pride. If God isn't included in your plans, then you might be prideful. When you don't ask God's opinion about what's going on in your life, when you're choosing when you're choosing a job, when you're buying a house, looking for a car, choosing a college, or deciding who to marry. And when you make those your decisions, if you're saying that you've got brains in your head and you don't need God's help to make your decision, if God is just something that you do in church on Sunday, but the rest of the week you put them up on a shelf, if that's what you're doing, God probably sees you as a prideful person. A proud person is someone who acts or talks as if they don't need others or even God. They are self-sufficient, and they can get by without your help or my help or God's. Now, the businessmen in James 4 behaved as if they didn't need God. They had feet in their shoes and brains in their heads. They acted like God had nothing to do with the blessings that they had received already. They had forgotten where all that they had already came from. So God's response to them would probably be very similar to that it was of Job. When he would probably say to these guys, "Tell me, did you create those feet that you have in the shoes? Did you create those brains in your head? Did you give yourself life? Well, who did? Oh, that's right, it was me." Every advantage that you and I have in this world ultimately comes from God. You are a marvelous creation. Granted, we all have some quirks and some shortcomings, and our bodies, if we're being real honest, may not function optimally all the time. But there isn't a scientist on earth who can reproduce the intricate workings of what God has given you. Think about those feet in your shoes. Do you realize that every time you take a step, you're using 200 muscles? You know, it's little wonder that scientists and medical personnel struggle so hard to create prosthetic devices that replace our hands and feet. What God has created is so complex. To completely duplicate it is nearly impossible. And what about that brain that you have in your head? Growing up, we had a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas on the bookshelf. Now, it occupied an entire shelf of that bookcase. But your brain, think about this, your brain stores 25 times more information than that encyclopedia set. Or maybe I should give you a more modern example. Based on current scientific understanding, the human brain's memory capacity is estimated to be incredibly vast. Recent research suggests that the brain's storage capacity, if it were a hard drive, would be 2.5 petabytes. For reference, 1 petabyte is equal to 1,024 terabytes, or 1,024,000 gigabytes. And that's just the memory. The processing power of the human brain, we're told, is currently incalculable, meaning there is no current way to understand how much or how quickly our brains process information. We have been created in the image of God. We owe everything that we are, everything that we have, everything that we will ever be to Yahweh. So if you're leaving Yahweh out of your decisions, if you're saying, I don't really need God, then you might be a prideful person. And that points to another mark of a proud person. A proud person is often an ungrateful person. And as a result, they're rarely, if ever, satisfied or happy. There's a guy who was around back in the 1800s. He was a preacher, but he was also an abolitionist. His name was Henry Ward Beecher. He once said, "A proud man is seldom a grateful man, for he never thinks he gets as much as he deserves. In one of Jesus' parables, he tells the story of a rich farmer who decides to tear down his barns so that he can build bigger ones. Then Jesus says this about the man. This is from Luke chapter 12. "You fool, you will die this very night. Then who will get everything you worked for? It is foolish to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God." So this rich farmer was a proud man. He didn't think he owed anything to God. So why should he be grateful? Why be thankful to a God who really didn't do anything? He says to himself, I planted my fields. I cared for those fields. I will harvest those fields. So why should I be thankful when I did everything? And by that standard, a lot of people in our world are proud. They think that what they have is deserved, and that which they don't have is owed to them. I do a fair amount of pastoral counseling. It's usually very casual, and it's often about depression. And at some point, as we talk about the struggles they're going through, I will ask them to write down 10 things that they're thankful for. But most of the time, those people will struggle to complete that list of 10 things. Why? Because at the heart of many of our problems is ingratitude. Now, if I were to give those same people a piece of paper and ask them to write down everything that frustrates them, things that went wrong in their lives, I would imagine they could fill that entire piece of paper up and then keep asking for more. Why? Because most of us feel that what we don't have is owed to us. Inherently, we are proud and ungrateful people. And our pride keeps us from focusing on what we have and what we don't have, rather than focusing on God, who gave us all the good things that we have to begin with. You know, the plan of the businessman in James 4, it was all about them. They're going to go to this or that city. They're going to spend a year there. They're going to make a lot of money. It was all about them. And God is neither consulted nor thanked anywhere in their thinking process. Dr. Seuss tells us, you have brains in your head and feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know, and you are the only one who will decide where to go. As I told you earlier, this poem can make me a little uncomfortable. Now, I don't think Geisel, who was a very committed Lutheran, intended to diminish God's power. I don't think that at all. Rather, I think it's just a story that's meant to encourage children to believe in themselves, that they can be whatever they want to be. And that's a good question for us to close with. Where do you want to go with the time that you have remaining in this life? You have feet in your shoes and brains in your head. You know what you know. You can decide where you want to go. So where do you want to go? And most importantly, is God a part of that equation? I'm glad that you could be with us here today. I hope we can see you again real soon. Have a fantastic day.